We're here with another webinar. Josh, your co-founder, CEO of Supra. I'm here with my co-founder, John Jones. We have some of our distinguished researchers and gigabrains here that have some of you probably never met. And we're going to be revealing some really interesting protocols. Now, John, you want to jump in and share a little bit more, of course, for those that haven't tuned into our previous sessions, a little bit about Supra. And then I'd love to introduce our guests.
Yeah, sure. For one, as many of you might know, we're formerly known as Supra Oracles. We're Supra now. But it's been a long journey. Josh and I have been working and building Supra for the past 6.5 years. And since day one, we've been actually building a layer one with native Oracle, native bridging, native automation, with also native VRF and multi-VM support. But when DeFi summer came about in 2019, we saw all these Oracle manipulation issues, and we decided that we'd go to market solving the Oracle problem first. And so that's what we did. And so today we're on over 85 different networks: Ethereum, EVM based, Move, Aptos, and Sui, as well as Cosmos with Cosm Wasm. So it's really exciting, the traction that we've received over that time period. And we'd love to announce that since day one, we've been building this vertically integrated L1. Now, the status quo for DeFi applications or dApps in today has been to use external services for oracles, bridges, automation, and VRF, which we know to be very inefficient. For example, a DeFi application using Oracle here with this different network, using a bridge protocol with a different network. And the issue here is that there is latency, and you lose the L1 security assumptions when you introduce these different protocols on these different networks. And so we look at these applications, our researchers and our developers look at these type of applications as almost like a Frankenstein dApp. And so Supra solves this with a fully vertically integrated blockchain, making all these services natively available on one layer one. And what this does is this design helps enable super dApps with faster performance, shared security, lower costs, and no scale limitations. And also this multi-VM support lets builders from any ecosystem to deploy directly onto Supra. So maybe, Josh, we can go into a little bit about what kind of makes a super dApp. What makes our infrastructure and this fully vertically integrated blockchain different from these modular type or modularly built applications or blockchains?
Yeah, absolutely. So the status quo, as we discussed, is you have one network for smart contract capability. And then even in this layer two world, you may have another network for data availability, another network for settlement, another network for execution. And then if your application needs price feed data, right? Smart contracts, remember, are closed loop systems, and blockchains are closed loop systems. They do not communicate with the outside world, nor do they communicate with each other, right? So if your application is like a layer two, and it also needs to communicate with the outside world to get external data, maybe that's price feed data. Maybe the application needs to know, what is the current price of Bitcoin right now for me to do this activity? Maybe this application needs to communicate with another blockchain or layer one or layer two. Maybe this application needs what they call automation and decentralized if this and then that situation. All of those services are typically different nodes run by different people in a different framework. And they all usually typically require a gas token for each of these services. So you introduce more security vulnerabilities. It's actually lower latency, faster. It's slower. My bad. I was thinking about super dApps. It's slower because you have to communicate to these other external systems that may have to execute first and then return the result for you to do the next step in your application. And finally, it's going to be cost more, and that cost will be borne by the end consumer in the end, right? Now, super dApp on Supra is an application that can be deployed on a variety of different multi-virtual machines, right? So we're going to do multi-VM support. It can tap into native price feeds. Block by block, we're going to have this information. We also have zero block delay automation execution. We also have block by block on-chain randomness. And this will effectively allow these applications to do so much more with a single framework, a single token, faster and more secure. So we're really excited about this notion of vertical integration. Now, vertical integration goes further than that. At Supra, what we're doing is taking it to the maximum degree. We have an opportunity to build a blockchain network from the ground up, really by thinking through first principles. And this also gives us the opportunity to enshrine DeFi primitives, decentralized finance ideas into the system itself. This notion of network-owned liquidity. Imagine if the network itself could have a decentralized treasury that could be controlled by the network governance over time. And what we have been thinking through are also, how do we bootstrap this liquidity? How do we build up a treasury where applications, these super dApps can also tap into, right? So this is what we're going to be focusing on today. And without further ado, I'd like to invite some of our esteemed panelists. These folks are folks that I've known for years. They have extreme creative ideas as well as diligence. And with further ado, Armand and Utkarsh, please introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Arman Abgarian. I'm member of DeFi team in Supra. With me is Utkarsh Sharma, another member of DeFi team. Both of us are coming with finance background. I personally switched to blockchain space last 7 years. I've been involved in multiple projects, worked with multiple company startups, mainly focused on deployment, development, research, and protocol design side. Utkarsh will speak about his background, but just very short summary. He switched to AI last several years. Last couple of years in particular, he's highly focused on the DeFi research with me in Supra. We are working on multiple DeFi protocols in Supra, including proof of efficient liquidity, which is the topic of today's discussion. In addition to that, we have a couple of more. One of those is a novel AMM protocol, a dynamic function market maker, which is going to be the next topic of webinar. We will speak about that in detail later. So for effectively, these DeFi protocols, they are multidisciplinary projects. So they require multiple disciplines, the knowledge in multiple disciplines. And sometimes some of these concepts might be new to some of you. For that reason, what we did, we worked with our amazing design team to create a small animated video, which is designed to break down the relatively complex ideas into more digestible pieces. Hopefully that video will help us to break down the idea for you. And later on, we can go, if there will be any questions, we can go ahead and discuss those questions and try to fully understand this protocol.
Thank you, Arman. I think Arman very nicely laid the ground for the video that's going to come. So I'll just briefly say hello. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. As Arman mentioned, collaboration goes way back. I primarily come from the more traditional finance world, where I've worked both on the buy side and sell side world. More recently, I've transitioned from trading and quant research over to AI, and until starting to focus more on blockchain technologies, which is essentially going to be one of the most exciting things to focus on for decades to come or more. Yeah, we're very excited to be here as a DeFi team, and we hope that the video that we will very shortly would help lay the ground for a very, very audience on the topic of today's discussion, which is proof of efficient liquidity protocol.
Thank you guys for that wonderful introduction. Once again, I want to echo, blockchain is very unique in that it is multidisciplinary: computer science, distributed networks, cryptography, economics, right? And yeah, with that in mind, we felt, and the team felt, that this video is going to be a good primer for everyone to catch up. The paper is on our website. Please dive into that. Anyone that really wants to dive deep, go to our website. These are novel ideas that enable new things. New business models, frankly, are emerging that are not possible without Web3 blockchain technology. So we're going to show a glimpse of this today. If our team can go ahead and load up the video and push play, that'd be great.
You might have seen many blockchains with staked value or locked capital supporting their security and DeFi systems. Such blockchain networks need to use a consensus mechanism, for example, proof of stake, where the staked capital enables them to provide secure and useful services to users. But have you ever wondered how new emerging blockchains attract, retain, and build their capital base to support their security and DeFi systems? At its core, every blockchain is simply a database of transactions, which are verified and maintained by a distributed network of computers. These computers coordinate to agree, confirm, validate these transactions with the help of consensus mechanisms. These computers are maintained and operated by operators. But how do these networks actually achieve consensus? One such mechanism is proof of stake, where users, typically called stakers, lock up, stake some capital, or as we say, stake their assets, to indirectly vouch for the quality of the services provided by those operators, ensuring network security and operational integrity. Honest or sincere work gets the operators and stakers staking rewards. Dishonesty or maliciousness can lead to slashing penalties on operators and their stakers' locked capital. Do good, get rewarded. Go bad, lose your stake. Sounds about fair, right? The risk of slashing the locked capital incentivizes operators to behave appropriately, and the locked capital becomes a source of economic security guarantee for the network. But how does an emerging network acquire staked capital to build a strong decentralized economic security? Without compelling economic security, it would be hard to attract users, as users would not like to use a network that does not have strong security guarantees. Without users, there is a struggle to attract staked capital to offer stronger security, as stakers would not prefer to secure a network that has little user adoption and cannot distribute compelling rewards. It's your classic chicken and egg situation. So which comes first, the staked capital or users? The bottom line is, proof-of-stake blockchains need staked capital for security. Nowadays, with more and more proof-of-stake blockchains entering the space, attracting capital becomes increasingly complex and competitive. Where simple short-term incentives could be effective earlier, that's simply not a sustainable strategy today. However, blockchain networks today are evolving beyond merely acting as smart contract platforms. Let's take the example of Supra. Supra itself is a multi-purpose network providing services like smart contract transaction processing, bridging and cross-chain communication, native Oracle services, enshrined automation capabilities, and even an integrated cross-chain automated market maker, which enables cross-chain value exchange. To ensure the security of the first four services, the system needs to attract staked capital. Additionally, to enable the functionalities of the cross-chain automated market maker, Supra also needs to attract liquidity. This creates an interesting problem and an opportunity. First, as a proof-of-stake network, Supra needs to attract staked capital to secure the network. Secondly, Supra also incorporates a value exchange mechanism, the AMM, that facilitates the conversion of one asset into another. The AMM needs to attract a collection of digital assets to its liquidity pools to facilitate value exchange, with the help of people like us taking up the role of liquidity providers by locking up our capital in smart contracts. Once this capital is acquired, the AMM utilizes it to facilitate asset exchange. Now, let's explore how the AMM performs this conversion. If a user wants to convert asset A to asset B, the AMM needs to have asset B in its reserves. This allows it to take asset A from the user and give them asset B. Therefore, without capital in these reserves, the AMM cannot facilitate the exchange of assets. Now, for each conversion, the AMM charges a small fee from the users. Since acquired capital is very valuable, the AMM shares a portion of these fees with the capital providers who support the AMM's operations, as a reward for their contribution. This creates a mechanism for the AMM to facilitate financial transactions, whereby liquidity providers earn a share of the fees that users pay. But wait, doesn't this create another dilemma? Yes. AMMs also often face a chicken and egg problem, similar to that of the proof-of-stake mechanism. They require a critical amount of liquidity to be operational and to attract users. But capital tends to go to AMMs that already have a significant number of users, ensuring that liquidity providers receive a significant amount of fees collected from those users. AMMs need capital to be operational, but they need to be operational to generate fees and attract capital. Speaking about the two chicken and egg problems, what should come first for a secure and operational proof-of-stake blockchain network? Staked capital, or users. And what should come first for an operational AMM? Liquidity, or users? With these questions being front and center, one thing is clear. The success of both the AMM and the underlying POS blockchain network is directly linked to the amount of locked capital it can attract, and to the sustainability of incentives a network distributes to attract capital. Before we go ahead, let's take a closer look at what we mean by capital here. The kind of digital assets we attract matter a lot here because there's thousands out there, but not all of them are created equal. Not every asset contributes to Supra's objectives of efficiently increasing the economic security of the network and creating a competitive AMM. For a POS network such as Supra, you want the staked assets to maintain their value. If the staked assets lose their value, it directly impacts network security, as there would be less total value securing the network. So the network would want to attract assets that are not significantly at risk of devaluation. Furthermore, it might be in the network's best interest to attract multiple assets, forming a diversified portfolio that, in total, carries a lower risk of devaluation. It does not necessarily need to be secured via a single asset, which is the case with most proof-of-stake blockchains today. To sum it up, a diversified asset portfolio that can maintain its value over time can contribute to establishing stronger economic security for a proof-of-stake network, when utilized as a staked asset base. But what about the AMM? On the AMM side, the system needs assets in the liquidity pools that users actively utilize. For example, let's take asset A and asset B. If many users wish to convert asset B to asset A, then asset A is in great demand. So if the AMM possesses more of asset A in the liquidity pools, it can more efficiently facilitate the exchange, creating value for the users. Therefore, attracting more of asset A helps the AMM meet its objectives. Additionally, the system's need for capital may also change over time. If the network experiences low user demand for value exchange, a significant amount of capital attracted to the AMM would merely remain in the liquidity pools, unused. Therefore, if we have a fixed amount of incentives to distribute to attract this capital, we need to use them efficiently over time. So during periods when the AMM experiences higher demand from users, the system could distribute more incentives to attract more liquidity and meet this demand, and it could distribute fewer incentives during periods of low demand. So to optimize the utilization of limited incentives to facilitate the success of the AMM, these incentives should be applied to attract capital in digital assets that are in high demand and to attract those assets at the right period of time when they could be effectively utilized by the users. This can create a robust and sustainable economic model for our AMM. Now, this is an interesting problem where the needs of both the POS security system and AMM may seem independent of each other. But what if they could work together to deal with the challenge of bootstrapping capital across both systems? Generally, POS blockchains like Supra often seek to attract staked capital solely in their own native token. However, could the capital submitted to AMM liquidity pools help diversify the asset base applied to ensure the economic security of the network? In other words, what if we could support the network's POS security with the liquidity attracted to the liquidity pools of AMM, while channeling staking incentives towards making a stronger case for attracting in-demand assets to the liquidity pools? Such a system can help liquidity providers submit capital for AMM liquidity, and then apply the same capital to support the economic security of the blockchain as well, making the risk-reward balance tip in the right direction for them. That's a very simplified version of Supra's answer to both of chicken and egg dilemmas. Their proof of efficient liquidity protocol, which aims to create sustainable incentives for attracting capital by using it more productively across all systems of the network. Let's take a closer look at PoEL. This is a framework of financial programs and incentives designed to help proof-of-stake blockchains like Supra with native DeFi applications bootstrap capital efficiently. When we say efficiently here, it's all about attracting the right digital assets with a limited budget over a long period of time. In other words, creating attractive incentives for capital by boosting its productivity within the system rather than resorting to short-lived tactics like API boosts and whatnot. At its heart, the PoEL protocol can be understood as a money market system with a single lender, the Supra network itself, and a single asset that can be borrowed, the staking token of Supra. After borrowing, staking for network security is the only action borrowers can take with Supra's tokens. Let's take Jen for example. Jen comes across Supra's PoEL protocol and decides to check out its dual rewards. She deposits capital into the liquidity pools of Supra's native AMM and receives liquidity provider tokens, or LP tokens for short, which represent her share of the liquidity pool. These LP tokens can then be used as collateral for borrowing the native staking token of Supra. She can now stake the borrowed Supra tokens in Supra's proof-of-stake scheme to back the network's security. An important thing here is that Jen can't use these borrowed Supra tokens for anything else. So she goes ahead and selects a service provider or an operator to delegate her Supra tokens, which is as good as vouching for the quality of the operator's service. In case this service provider fails in their duties, Jen will face a penalty and lose a portion of her collateral from the liquidity pools. However, if the service providers perform correctly, Jen stands to earn staking rewards, aka block rewards, while also earning AMM fees for the liquidity she added to the liquidity pool. That's how PoEL helps Jen gain income from two sources with the same capital. Now let's understand how the PoEL protocol functions and get a bit more technical, starting with the economic security side. We've already seen that the network would want to attract a diverse range of assets that are not significantly at risk of devaluation to optimize Supra's economic security and minimize systemic risk. Through the collateralization rate, the PoEL protocol incentivizes Jen to submit these types of assets to the AMM liquidity pools, then use them as collateral to borrow Supra tokens and stake them in the proof-of-stake scheme. The collateralization rate determines the amount of Supra that can be borrowed using specific assets placed in AMM liquidity pools as collateral. Strong assets that can help strengthen the network's security guarantees and decrease systemic risk would have lower collateralization rates, allowing Jen to borrow and stake more Supra, earning more staking rewards. Similarly, assets that potentially increase the system's instability would carry higher collateralization rates. This naturally motivates Jen and others like her to bring the right kind of assets to the system, contributing to risk minimization for the network. In essence, this protocol aims to attract assets that assist the Supra network in meeting its security objectives. But what about the AMM side of the story? The objective on this side is to attract assets that users want to utilize to the AMM's liquidity pools. However, the demand for utilizing the AMM and the assets held in the liquidity pools is never fixed. It changes over time. This is why PoEL dynamically manages the staking rewards budget. Let's understand this with Alex and Mark, taking them as the only users of Supra's AMM. Say Alex and Mark used to exchange A and B, but now they're trading smaller amounts, possibly due to the overall crypto market trend. The AMM's need for liquidity pool reserves of these assets to facilitate exchanges also reduces. And let's assume that such a decline in usage has also been experienced with all other asset pools supported by the AMM. So when the AMM sees a trend of decline in demand, the PoEL protocol also starts reducing the budget for staking rewards available to participants in the PoEL protocol to save resources for more active times. So if Jen adds assets A and B to the AMM liquidity pools, borrows staking tokens, and stakes them during this period, she will receive relatively smaller staking rewards. This discourages her from contributing large amounts of capital that might remain idle in the AMM liquidity pools. On the other hand, when Alex and Mark start to show a growing demand for converting between these assets, requiring larger reserves to support these conversions and future demand, the PoEL protocol starts increasing the total budget for staking rewards for capital contributors. This encourages more participation in the PoEL protocol and capital contributions. In such times, the AMM itself naturally generates more fees, further motivating participation, and that's consecutively amplified by the PoEL protocol. So if Jen contributes her assets to PoEL during this period, the total reward she earns would be relatively higher. Therefore, when the system needs more capital to meet the rising demand from users, Jen is more likely to contribute more capital. The PoEL protocol algorithmically regulates and optimizes how staking rewards are distributed across different periods based on user activity trends. It does this in a fully decentralized way, ensuring the sustainability of the incentives given out. We have now determined the total staking rewards that can be distributed at different times. However, the protocol also needs to decide how to allocate the available reward budget across various assets, as not all assets are equally valuable, as mentioned earlier. This allocation is managed through variable interest rates. Here's how it works. Imagine Alex and Mark want to convert asset C into asset A and asset B. They prefer converting asset C into asset A more than into asset B, leading to a higher demand for asset A's reserves than those of asset B. The PoEL protocol considers this aspect when allocating rewards. It employs a variable interest rate mechanism on staking rewards earned on the borrowed staking tokens for this purpose. By applying varying interest rates to the staking rewards distributed among contributors of different assets, which may also be negative, it directs a greater share of the total rewards to liquidity providers of asset pools with lower interest rates. If the interest rate is negative, it means asset contributors are granted additional rewards rather than being charged interest. Therefore, contributors of asset A, like Jen, receive higher rewards as opposed to those of asset B. So how does this ultimately play out for Gen? Well, liquidity providers like Gen can keep an eye on the staking reward budget, variable interest rates, collateralization rates, and AMM fees to reposition her assets and improve her returns, naturally bringing the most desirable assets to the system. Whenever the system indicates demand or desirability based on the offered rewards, she can also allocate additional capital. That's how the PoEL protocol extends the utility of the capital in the AMM liquidity pools, applying it to also ensure the network's economic security, while offering dual income to capital providers like Gen. Its unique incentive program and set of dynamic rates effectively attract the right mix of digital assets to the liquidity pools, which helps optimize risks and enhance user experience. This ultimately boosts the economic security and reliability of the Supra network as well. So far, the PoEL protocol has solved two chicken and egg problems, allowing the blockchain to not only attract capital to secure the network, but also help users utilize the same capital to provide liquidity for the AMM. But what about the multiple essential developer services that Supra provides natively on its blockchain network? We've seen that Supra vertically integrates smart contract platforms, cross-chain communications, oracles, DVRF, and automation services all in one blockchain. While this stands as a unique offering for Web3 developers, attracting initial users can still be a challenge. Without initial users, the network might struggle to achieve network effects, leading to fewer incentives for new developers to build on the network. Also, there's a risk of the network's infrastructure not being optimally utilized, as a small number of users can lead to underutilization of the assets submitted to the liquidity pools, compromising the network's objectives. So, can we continue attracting more capital, but also somehow incentivize new users, compel time-sensitive usage of the network? This is where service fee credits come into the picture. To better understand service fee credits, let's say Gen plays a game deployed on Supra, or she is the game developer herself. Now we know that when Gen submits capital to Supra's AMM liquidity pools, she can both earn DeFi fees and staking rewards with the PoEL protocol as usual. But now she can also be granted special service fee credits. These service fee credits can then be used to avail services offered by Supra to build her game. So if she needs Oracle data feeds or verifiable randomness for her game, she can use the service credits earned through PoEL to practically avail these services for free. That's an additional reward. Of course, these credits are designed to incentivize usage of Supra's services. They're non-transferable, time-bound, and can only be used for Supra services by design. So Gen cannot sell or trade these credits in any open market or hold on to them forever, which ensures incentives while rewarding users, and also helps sustain the network. If Gen does not use them within a period of time, her service fee credits will expire. So as soon as Gen earns these credits, she is incentivized to use them, driving timely utilization of the network's resources. And since these credits further help increase Gen's earnings, she will now have 3 sources of income, which will help Supra achieve network effect with users and capital. By the way, these credits are not unlimited. The PoEL protocol strategically distributes a limited number of credits over fixed periods of time to drive usage and attract capital, especially during the early bootstrapping stage of the network. As the network grows and achieves network effects, the number of credits being distributed will decrease. This also incentivizes users to jump on the Supra ship ASAP. In essence, the PoEL protocol maintains its goal to attract the right type of assets at the right time, offering more credits to contributors bringing in-demand assets. Additionally, more credits are distributed during periods of higher demand, or when the network is in greater need of capital. So the PoEL protocol strategically distributes its limited incentives to motivate Gen to bring the right type of assets to the system at the right time. Being prudent about her assets, Gen cares about her capital, where it goes, and how it's used. She notices that Supra is doing everything it can to maximize the utility it can derive from the capital she has brought to the network. This utility maximization is what stands out about the PoEL protocol to Gen, as well as the entire community. This utility maximization of every unit of capital in the Supra network will initiate a self-reinforcing cycle where Supra's core native AMM seeks to attract diversified risk capital to enable on-chain value exchange, which can also secure the network. Maximal utility delivered on each unit of capital attracts further capital. In the background, PoEL protocol takes care of the more intricate details like balancing risks and rewards. And while we've discussed cross-chain AMM as a DeFi application use case so far, PoEL protocol can be applied to also bootstrap liquidity in other native DeFi protocols, such as lending protocols and insurance markets. To sum it up, proof of efficient liquidity is a protocol designed to solve the chicken and egg problem faced by emerging networks by focusing on maximizing the productivity of every unit of capital the network attracts. This is not a new consensus mechanism, it's simply an auxiliary layer for POS blockchains with natively integrated AMMs. It doesn't just help sustain their network, but enhances it over a period of time by focusing on causal economic factors that are at the heart of cryptonomics. This framework helps digital asset owners seek attractive returns on their locked capital, helps the AMM bootstrap liquidity, helps the network mitigate asset-specific risks, and boost the amount of transactions. In doing so, it offers a system of improving risk-adjusted returns generated for every unit of resources or capital within the network. It helps your AMM liquidity attain maximum productivity, optimizing risk and returns. At the same time, it efficiently bootstraps capital for both staked security systems and AMM systems without paying out outsized or unsustainable rewards. That's what proof of efficient liquidity is all about: budgeted and risk-conscious incentivization, which asserts sustainability, because sustainability matters.
Oh, okay, excellent. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. This is a kind of multidimensional solution, then holistically thought about. Let me just do a brief kind of overview and some of the interesting things I really like about this. Jen, this person that maybe has Ether as an asset. What Jen may be able to actually do is perhaps she is deploy her Ether into some liquid staking derivative, Lido or whatnot. Okay. So now suppose that Supra can actually accept Lido ETH or liquid stake derivative ETH. So that's already one source of yield for Jen, maybe 5%, 4% from this step. Now suppose that Supra accepts this liquid LSD ETH equals. Jen now lends for LSD ETH and borrows Supra from our decentralized network-owned liquidity treasury, basically our kind of reserves. Jen now has Supra. She has taken her ETH, put it to liquid staking derivative ETH, borrowed Supra, right? And the only thing she can do with this during this bootstrapping period, remember, this is a program that's not necessarily going to be going on forever, but it's to help the system get going. She can now take this and the Supra that she's borrowed, and the only thing she can do is stake it and provide simultaneously, what she has done is she's provided liquidity into the AMM or enshrined AMM. This liquid staking derivative ETH is in our pool. And she staked it to a node operator. That node operator, like this, that entity is a good act and they'll earn block rewards. And she'll get her delegated amount proportional to her stake that she's delegated. So there's actually several sources of additional yield that can be generated. This type of rehypothecation is only really possible on blockchain, at least in a transparent, decentralized manner. It's definitely not possible elsewhere. So she's able to earn, suppose, 5%, 4% from Lido or some sort of provider like that. She's going to also earn some AMM fee. And she's also going to earn some block reward. This is where we think gets really compelling because we believe for this initial bootstrapping period, however long that might be, it might be 1 year, it might be 5 years. I don't know. We don't know exactly. But during this period, this will be what we believe to be a sustainable source because there's real value generated here with this capital. They're providing economic security to our network. The node operator is also collecting its commission. The block rewards are paid out in such a way that they incentivize early actors to protect and provide security. So this is one way that we think is going to be very interesting and novel. The first time anyone's done anything like this degree, and we're really excited about this. So just a couple more points, because I think that everyone needs to hear this. We intend to accept assets from multiple major ecosystems. Imagine we are backed by Ether, Solana, Sol, DAX, Bitcoin, perhaps, right? It all comes down to security in the end, like the cryptography and being able to communicate across these chains. But if we can do that, then we can use these different assets from these major value kind of pools to bootstrap super security, economic security. So this is going to be super cool. Because what does this also give us? It also gives us pools of these various assets. Now, Supra is uniquely positioned as this like middleware, intro layer system, like a middle system that's connecting to all the major layer ones and layer twos over time, right? And suppose that we also have bootstrapped in liquidity of these native assets from these different ecosystems. What we believe can happen ultimately, and I don't want to go too deeply into this because this will be a future webinar. We believe Supra, with this positioning, will have better execution at better rates than and faster than native asset for native asset settlement. Okay. So suppose I'm going from Ether to AVAX or Sol, right? The actual token. We can go through Supra may actually outperform a centralized exchange, the whole time being done in a non-custodial, decentralized manner. So we think this is very remarkable. This is an instance where we can do something that you literally can do before, and we believe for actual finality, for final native asset settlement. This is faster than a centralized exchange. If you really want to go from the actual asset to the other actual asset. So we're really excited about that. But let's jump into some questions. So the first question is actually for Armand. We've abbreviated the protocol PoEL. What is the E? Let's really emphasize, what is the E all about and what does it mean?
Thank you, Josh. So here, E here stands for efficiency. As we also discussed in the video, the PoEL protocol is all about capital efficiency. We are aiming to solve these two chicken egg problems by allowing to utilize the same capital to both as a source of liquidity in the DeFi application, in this case, cross-chain AMM, and also to use it as a source of economic security, being applied as a staked asset base for staked capital to facilitate the economic security of the network. So effectively, it uses the same asset for both these objectives, which is itself makes the utilization of capital more efficient. At the same time, from the perspective of LPs are able to capital this way and therefore are able to earn more rewards because of their capital is more efficiently deployed to help the network to achieve its objectives.
Yeah, really just for folks, I might occasionally reword some of this. Basically, in the end, why do people do this? Why would people be incentivized to do this? It's because if they have a digital asset, maybe Bitcoin, maybe Ether, and it's just sitting there, it may not necessarily it's not earning any yield. It's like a fixed asset. It's not being put to work, so to speak. This is the birth of DeFi in general, like taking a digital asset or some asset and put it to work, earning yield. Now the yield has to come from somewhere, right? And in our case, it's very clear. One, it's coming from cross-chain AMM fees, which will be generated over time. Number two, if you're providing liquidity into that, you're receiving rewards from fees for that. Number two, though, you're also getting some kind of block reward for the node operator that you've delegated to. This is why I want to make it clear that this isn't some sort of Ponzi scheme or anything like that. This is very clear where the value comes from, very transparent. And I think this is actually going to be a competing model, believe it or not. I believe what we're discussing is going to be a competing model to even EigenLayer. This notion of taking an asset and restaking it. Suppose the active validator service or network or layer 2 or whatever it is, blockchain layer 1, whatever it is, just like Supra, right? We are going to have some block rewards because we are in the proof of stake type of system, right? And that means this type of model we're discussing, Supra is pioneering it. I think others will follow that this might be a better way to bootstrap economic security than, or at least it's a competing approach to EigenLayer. Now, of course, Supra, we really thought deeply around the technology, capabilities, the functionality of providing this kind of liquidity layer is something that we're really excited about. So the next question is for Akarsh. So just in your words, how would you say the PoEL protocol benefits Supra?
Yes, thank you, Josh. So I think a lot of the benefits have already been covered, but let's try to bring them all together. So the PoEL protocol helps Supra in several different ways. The first is that helps us build network security and liquidity. But we do so in a way that we are attracting capital using sustainable incentives, budget, and not simply seeking to dial up the payout meter to attract the max capital possible now without thinking about how to sustain that flow over a certain period of time or over a period of time. The second one is that we're seeking to attract the right kind of capital. Specifically, what we mean is that we wish to attract assets that have qualities that are desirable to us, which could be either in terms of a demand within our ecosystem or measured by asset-specific risk characteristics. Third is that the protocol that we've introduced today essentially aligns interests of various stakeholders within the wider ecosystem. And it's this alignment that helps the network grow and Supra truly unlock network effects, because unless all stakeholders' interests are aligned within a network, it's difficult to build a network for the future. And I suppose the fourth one is that the benefit of having additional credits that in our example, Jen receives when she brings the capital would help us increase user adoption for services within the Supra system, which is really just going to kickstart an organic way to build a much bigger user base and also sustain that flow, because we've already helped potential user finance the usage of services within our network.
So I do want to briefly touch upon this credit service fee model, right? The service fee credit model, which is also now we got this idea from Justin Sun's team at Tron. Now it's not exactly the same thing at all, but they do have this notion of ability to use the network if you lock the capital. Now, in our case, suppose you provide a liquidity to this AMM and there's activity there. We think, and just by and large, we think that type of activity, especially cross-chain DeFi, the fees that are generated from that can be more than the fees that we could generate from some penny transaction fees, perhaps. So we actually think that this is where this notion of the service fee credit comes in, right? Like you're providing liquidity to the network. And remember, this is not a forever thing. This is a bootstrapping program, maybe first 1 to 5 years, who knows, right? Maybe up to 10 years, maybe, who knows. Long story short, though, you're providing liquidity. The system is earning a fee. You're getting most of that fee, but some of that fee is going back to our treasury. And in return, you're getting this free service. You're getting access to the service and a certain amount of transactions on the network for free. The users are like, I got this credit, I should use it. Let's use it or lose it. So this incentivized, and we're really thinking deeply about how do we create these deep network effects. How do you bootstrap the system? Chicken and egg, right? So yeah, it's really exciting what the team has been cooking up here. The next question is for Armand. So let's see here. In this kind of design, and it's not just there's many different stakeholders. Let's focus on the liquidity provider a little bit more, and let's discuss how this proof of efficient liquidity protocol benefits the LP, the liquidity providers. Let's go into that a little bit more.
Yes. So in the video, we covered already quite a bit regarding this. What are the main benefits that LPs are getting? Effectively, the main addition, the income streams, we can divide this income stream into 3 main buckets. The first one is AMM fees, like any other liquidity provider. If you put your liquidity in a DeFi application, in this case an AMM, and there's the usage of the pool reserves, the LP gets AMM fees as a compensation for the service that the LP has provided. In addition to this, because we are extending utility of the asset to also be applied as a source of economic security in Supra, these LPs are also getting staking rewards from the network, which are, again, as a service provider, helping us to build a stronger economic security guarantees for the network. And lastly, just the point George just discussed about is the service fee credits. So LPs effectively are also getting service fee credits, which can be utilized to use effectively for free many of the Supra services. These LPs can be both developers as well as users. So for example, in the video, we discussed the case for a game developer who also acting as an LP. By acting LP, they can get the service rewards, service fee credits, and then they can use the service credits effectively to get some of the Supra services for free for their game. At the same time, if the user is just a game player, right, the user of the game, they can just use the service fee credits, not to pay for smart contract transactions of using the game. So effectively, it's catered to help different stakeholders and different type of users to enjoy these credits as another benefit, and effectively potentially boosting the total reward distributed to LPs. Now, this is the first advantage. Effectively, there are multiple income streams. The second one is effectively the fairness of returns. As we discussed in the video, we are trying to distribute more to capital providers who are giving the most desirable assets to the network. In this case, submitting their liquidity to our liquidity pools. So capital providers who are submitting high demand assets effectively are being rewarded more than the capital providers who are, let's say, submitting less desirable assets. From this perspective, it creates a fair environment where the capital contributors who are helping the network to achieve its objectives more are rewarded more than the other capital providers who are, let's say, contributing less. And lastly, from risk management perspective, effectively, normally in a proof of stake blockchains, if you want to become a contributor of economic security, a staker, you need to buy a specific asset to assume that role. Sometimes for some LPs or for some, let's say, users, they don't want to buy that staking token. They just want to be able to contribute economic security without directly being exposed to that asset for multiple reasons. It can be risk optimization reasons or return optimization reasons. In this case, through PoEL protocol, we are enabling for this type of participants who have a liquidity and want to also become a staking service providers to effectively use the PoEL protocol to assume this role as well, and to correspondingly enjoy the benefits coming from this role.
Awesome. Yes. Once again, I just want to echo that this system is, we really try to design a system that was sustainable, and that, remember, block rewards are actually, to large degrees, block the subsidies. Like Bitcoin has like the halving every so often. And this is a subsidy. This is something to get the system going, right? Now, we actually are very careful with our block rewards because they're limited supply, right? So we want to utilize them when we need them, when there's low activity. We want to basically modulate the economic cycles so that we don't overpay out, so to speak. With the liquidity pools, and this kind of dynamic approach is unique to this notion of sustainability based off of actual network usage. This means we can more effectively utilize and put to work this limited supply subsidy of the super token block rule. So this is something I really love about our design. The next question is for Ricard for dynamic collateralization regarding the dynamic collateralization rate. Okay. So in the animation, we had Jen, that character, deposited capital into one of the liquidity pools, receives this, the LP token, which can be used to borrow native assets, the native token of Supra, right? The Supra token. Can we speak about that a bit more and dissect that?
Yes, thank you, Josh. Specifically sticking with the example of Jen. Now, the amount and the type of capital that she has to bring in order to be able to borrow the native token is essentially going to be governed by our dynamic collateral rate, which is unique in not just that it is dynamic, but also because of the fact that it's asset specific. In doing so, our goal really is to always ensure that despite evolving dynamics, be it asset specific market conditions or the protocol state that we're in at any given point in time, we're always progressing towards a risk conscious economic objectives that we've highlighted in the paper. So for viewers who very kindly picked up our paper is structured, and actually a second instance really just goes into the key principles and objectives on which our proposed protocol is actually based. So everything we do is seeking to progress the state of the protocol and the ecosystem in that direction. Now, this rate is essentially capturing three specific objectives, right? First is what type of assets we have that are eligible, which essentially translates into a form of governance-based qualitative qualification criteria. The second is risk homogenization, because no two assets are the same, either in their individual asset-specific risk characteristics or their demand term structure expressed using desirability coefficient that we've spoken about in our paper. And third is diversification. Now, since not all assets are the same, there's a lot of value gained by ensuring that our network's economic security is derived from not just one individual asset, but a collection of assets. And that's essentially the idea behind dynamic.
So I touched on that a bit as well. Like Supra token is actually in this initial bootstrapping period, the economic security is actually derived from the security of other layer ones of major assets. Ether will be a big one. Solana will be a big one. EVX will be a big one. Polychain, Matic, and even layer 2s possibly. In the end, the asset just has to be like low like less volatility and a lot of depth. This is very interesting because now we're not dependent on just one thing, but actually it's a basket of goods, so to speak, right? In which we derive our security. Okay, the next question is for Arma. So back to this notion of incentive alignment and sustainability, right? So we talked about sustainability in the incentivized reward system, but why is that important? Why not just pay out the maximum incentive and back the capital? Like, why sustainability important here?
Yes, thank you, George. So incentives effectively are cost for a network or a protocol, right? If you have limited resources and you are trying to use these limited resources to achieve specific objectives, you want to utilize it as efficiently as possible, because the term limited already speaks that you have a limited amount of limited chance to achieve those objectives. Now, we have seen in DeFi ecosystem some multiple, let's say, liquidity mining programs, which are sometimes due to different problems and issues. Some of them incentivize malicious behavior by the liquidity providers or the participants they want to attract. Some of them, after the rewards are reduced, some of these capital providers left the DeFi application, effectively making the DeFi application out of capital and therefore less operational. In our case, we are trying to, the main point of PoEL protocol is try to align the objectives of the system as much as possible with the capital providers. And when we speak in detail in the video, what are those objectives? And we also already discussed some of those during this panel discussion. So I will repeat one more time. So we want to make sure that these assets contribute to economic security of the network. And again, I want to highlight that this is a limited amount of incentives. So it doesn't mean that the whole network's economic security is going to be based on these limited, these portfolio of assets that are used. Actually, this is very limited. And most of the security is going to still come from staking Supra token as a staking token. So this is a limited amount of program designed for bootstrapping and also helping the network to achieve a more higher security. Secondly, the second objective is the bootstrapping RAMM, helping to build a pool of capital of different assets which are highly utilized by the users. So we already spoke about that we want to attract only type of asset which which users want to utilize, and we want to distribute less rewards for the assets which are not as much desirable as the ones which you want to attract. And lastly, also, again, going back to service fee credits, we want to bootstrap our user base because we are giving these limited time, in limited bounded time service fee credits, which users are motivated to use as soon as possible. Otherwise, they cannot lose it. Effectively, we want to distribute all these incentives to maximally align the behavior of the LPs with the objectives of the network.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you, Arman. So I do want to emphasize that this is a bootstrapping program and protocol. As Arman mentioned, this is not for everyone, forever. And our entire economic security guarantee is not derived fully from fluctuating of multi-asset collateral, right? But some of it will be. And it's a way to just get the ball moving forward, like start to build momentum around the economic security. So really great bootstrapping program. Now for us, especially, moreover, this helps us bootstrap our AMM or liquidity pools in these different assets, which ultimately becomes a revenue engine for the decentralized network, right? The decentralized network will have a decentralized treasury, network owned liquidity. And imagine the deep future, I don't know, maybe in 10 years, where people have developed, and I say 10 years as if that's the future, it's like next door, but basically just comes and goes fast. Imagine if someone could accrue enough reputation that they don't have to do over collateralized when they can just stake their reputation. Yeah, I need $2,000 tomorrow. I've been a good actor this semester. And then you're borrowing from the decentralized treasury. Imagine that. So things like that, novel use cases can emerge by having a network-owned decentralized treasury that actually has an economic model, right? So we're bootstrapping these liquidity pools. There's fees generated when you go from native asset to native asset, cross-chain exchange, right? Those fees that go into this decentralized pool. Basically what I'm trying to get at is that we have a revenue source for the decentralized treasury. And this is what we expect to grow to become actually something that eclipses the fees that could ever generate from transaction fees. Our job in blockchain is to push transaction fees to as low as possible, sub-penny. Yeah, you can imagine how many transactions you need to have in order to generate revenue. But anyways, that'll be for another conversation. The other thing that I think is really important to discuss is, this This model is as I mentioned, it also allows us to bootstrap usage of the network. You provide liquidity, you have free access to the services, and that's going to incentivize folks to like, hey, I might as well use it, see what else I could do here. I got free service. I can do DeFi without paying transaction fees. I can play this game. I think that's going to be a big driver for us. On-chain games. I'd like to put some Supra or some asset. I have this free credits and I can play some sort of on-chain game without any fee. Things like this are really interesting. All right. So moving forward here back to the dynamic reward allocation, right? Sustainability incentives. But remember, our system is for rational act. People do this because there's a reason to do it. And it's because economic incentives is put that way. Okay. So one of the aspects that Jen keeps an eye on during when she's allocating the rewards in this example in the video, like why does she have to do this? Can you talk more about the dynamics of our reward structure? This is, to be completely frank for everyone, this is one of the a little bit more complicated parts, in my personal opinion, from a UX perspective. It introduces like the staker, the person that's bringing liquidity, they need to pay attention to the fluctuation. Now we assume that this actor, this person that's participating in this proof of efficient liquidity protocol, providing liquidity, are keeping an eye on the rewards and asset utilization. But yeah, Vikarsh, if you can jump in here to talk about more about the dynamics of the reward structure. What are the tools that are used to ensure sustainability in our general reward mechanism?
Yes, like we already mentioned, that our protocol is actually based around a set of principles and objectives that we very explicitly lay out in our paper. So what essentially makes our reward mechanism dynamic is that during periods of high demand, the protocol would increase the rewards that are being allocated to encourage more capital contributions. And let's say in periods where there isn't that much demand, simply to prevent idle liquidity, we would reduce the rewards that are being distributed. Now, this dynamic adjustment essentially ensures that the reward budget that we have is used quite effectively, not just in a single period, but across multiple periods to not just attract, but actually to maintain capital, which again helps us answer the question of, yes, we can attract liquidity by distributing rewards, but how do you retain it over a period of time? We do that by first keeping an eye on a few different epochs and not just focusing on one. And second, concentrating on the dynamics that are evolving around us and diligently reflecting those dynamics and the rewards that we're happy to pay. Now, so essentially altogether, now, in addition to the dynamic collateral rate that we've already discussed about a short while ago, we also have the concept of a variable interest rate mechanism and epoch-specific reward budget. Now, naturally, whilst the epoch-specific reward budget ensures that we are always staying in line with an eye on the long-term goal of sustaining the capital that we attract, the variable interest mechanism encourages the right kind of capital to be submitted on that is brought in order to be able to borrow our ETF staking token. So, in essence, these are three of the levers that contribute towards the dynamic nature of our reward structure, which we expect to fully reflect the changing nature of the environment we're operating in without leading to rigidity that lead to problems in tree protocol.
Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, there's some game theory here. There's economic incentives here. There's work thinking is really about how do we express the incentives out by and large and create as much value as possible. Because these type of systems, we got one chance to do this right. But this is like a once in a lifetime thing. So you want to bootstrap it and be as sustainable as possible. Make sure you definitely get to a point eventually where the system doesn't have to rely on subsidies. Okay, so moving on to the next question. This one's for Arma. So is the PoEL protocol only intended to serve Supra? Like I touched upon this earlier, but I'd love to get your point of view on this. Or do you foresee this being useful for other networks as well? Can be used for other DeFi applications, or is it only suitable for AMMs?
Thank you, Josh. Yes, PoEL protocol has been designed to be not only used for Supra, effectively the DeFi primitive that can be adopted by other networks which have native DeFi applications. This type of native applications could be, let's say, lending markets, derivative markets, others. So there are multiple app chains, so they are networks, but at the same time, they also have a DeFi use case, and the network is designed to optimize for that DeFi use case. Now, I also want to highlight that the protocol is designed in a way to be backward compatible to some of the existing POS blockchains. So it doesn't mean that you can only deploy and use this protocol when you are just starting a network. You can also effectively, if you have an existing network and then let's say user base wants to bootstrap liquidity using the advantage of PoEL protocol, they can also be applied for existing blockchains to achieve this objective. Now, also worth to highlight that this is not the AMM specific protocol. We highly focused on the AMM use case in the video because Supra is a crushing AMM, and therefore we wanted to break down the idea based on this specific use case to make it more digestible. However, any like multiple other DeFi use cases can be bootstrapped the same way as we discussed so far. Like these use cases can be, let's say, lending markets, can be insurance markets, and etc. So there is no specific limitation what type of use cases can be bootstrapped based on this approach, as long as, let's say, liquidity mining programs are applicable for this type of use cases. I also want to highlight that from the UX perspective, let's say if you are bootstrapping liquidity for this type of applications, it's not, let's say, it is not only the case that you need to follow all of these metrics and collateralization rate, dynamic interest rate, etc. The liquidity provider can just look into the rewards, right? With what type of API is provided for each type of asset. So they just need to only look into one metric, which is, let's say, the APY of the specific asset. And based on that, they can navigate whether they want to contribute more of that specific asset, they want to contribute less of that specific asset, and correspondingly optimize their decisions. So from that perspective, yes, we are also doing the implementation stage. The UX can be optimized from that perspective to require less work from the liquidity provider to efficiently participate in the program.
Just a couple of points there, Rakesh, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I was just going to actually just wrap up what Arman very nicely pointed out, which was that, yes, the complexity that results from different components that are reflected in the rewards that are attributed eventually to Gen, in the case of our example, they're generally off. So if someone doesn't wish to look into the mechanics of what are the contributors of the reward at the end, so it's absolutely fine. They can simply concentrate on the rewards that they're earning on a particular asset that they've brought to the system. But for the more savvy ones, if they are interested in understanding, okay, I have this asset, why is it that this is yielding a certain reward, whereas the other one is yielding a different one, then they can focus on the components of that constitute that reward, and then hopefully highlight the ones that allow them to actually optimize the decision according to their individual preferences, because one user might have some preference.
Yeah, right. Now, let me add to that. To explain to you like your 5, just imagine a user interface marketplace. Here's what it is. Here's the APY, one-click delegation. That's what it might be abstracted out towards. So let's talk about this a bit more. Okay. This protocol, by and large, we think can be a way that new systems, new networks, in eigenlayer world, AVSs, active validator sets, application chains, application-specific chains, running Tendermint perhaps, X, Y, and Z. This protocol can work in it too, right? You're going to want to have the ability for the network to have some network on liquidity, lend it out, et cetera, sure. But these are smart contract based. So what's nice about this is it can also work on the existing networks, right? As I already pointed out. And that said, Supra is going to be, we are pioneering this, and we do hope to attract the most liquidity. And how do we do this? If there's a marketplace, how can Supra say it has X, Y, and Z APY? And our answer to it will be a couple. We have EMM fees, we have block reward fees, but Supra is a vertically integrated network that wants price sheet data like Oracle services, cross communication services, automation services, randomness services. These are additional revenue drivers for Supra that other blockchains don't have. So we have additional revenue streams that other blockchains don't have. And moreover, we're deployed on, I think, 85, 86 networks, layer 1, layer 2, subnets, parachains. And those will be the network. Supra network will be deriving fees from other networks using our services. We offer these services natively to Supra. We also service all the other networks, right? This is why perhaps our sustainability, and we don't want to talk about our possible APY because we don't exactly know, but perhaps we may have a story here that shows that we will have the most possible payout. And of course, the denomination of payout, okay, Supra token, whatever it might be, you want to keep your eye on the value of that as well. Nonetheless, I am seeing this marketplace emerge, this kind of simple user experience that you guys were talking about. And if someone wants to derive deeper, it's like, why is this number so high? Or where does this come from? You're like, oh, okay, it comes from EMF fees, block rewards, Oracle fees, cross-checking fees, automation fees, verifiable route function, auto price. We'll do other verifiable compute services as well. We're really excited about that. Actually, I have one more question for Karsh, and then I can ask to move over to the general community if there's any other questions. Coming back to the service fee credits and the fact that Supra is a multi-service microservice architecture. So most of the discussion was earlier around the efficiency of attracting liquidity, but we also mentioned this concept of service fee credits for our various services, Supra's price fees, DVRF, automation, or contract fees, and others. Let's wrap up this conversation around that. Can you speak more about this?
Yes, thank you, Josh. So yes, we have the concept of service fee credits. Now, sticking with the example of Jen, again, coming from the video, thank you, Jen. Imagine that she plays a game that's deployed on Supra or is a developer herself. Because she's not just receiving the DeFi fees and staking rewards as a result of the capital that she is bringing to our network, but also receives additional credits. They enable her to actually use the services that are on the network essentially free of charge or be compensated for their cost to a limited extent. Now, obviously, like many things, these are credits, but which are limited by its very nature. But in addition to being limited, they are non-transferable. So it is only linked to the wallet address of the specific user who's brought the asset to Supra. And more importantly, they're time-bound. Now, the time-bound nature of these credits encourage the users to use them or lose them, right? So it creates a sense of expediency in making use of the benefits, additional benefits that they're being offered solely for being a valuable member of the ecosystem. So in essence, upon receiving not just rewards for the capital that Jen brings, she's receiving credits, able to use this for services. We are able to, as a network, expand the user base and also catalyze the process of bootstrapping our network in a very sustainable way, without going overboard on any one of the many metrics that have historically led to problems and several that we.
All right. Thanks so much for that, guys. So just in summary, before we move to the audience question, Supra, our general thesis is full vertical integration. About a single node, our consensus node in the blockchain, they have enough compute and bandwidth to do more things. And moreover, we have a notion of this randomized tribes and clans architecture, which allows us to do execution sharding across different services. And some of these services are stateless, meaning you are executing some smart contracts in one epoch or cycle. The next cycle, you might be doing Oracle services where you just pick up, you don't have to synchronize states, so you can move around fast. And you can be running more than one service at a time. Now we have, I believe, the most elegant solution for vertically integrating high throughput smart contract platform, powered by Moonshot consensus. Moonshot is very fast, the high throughput. It's been awarded some academic accolades recently, pretty impressive ones, putting us among the stars of consensus algorithms. We have our DOR protocol, decentralized Oracle agreement. That too also got into a top academic and one of the better ones in the world, and putting us as a protocol for Oracle data, state of the art. We also have a cross-chain communication protocol, our automations protocol, our on-chain randomness protocol. These services, in one unified vertically integrated stack, will enable super dApps, applications to do new things they couldn't do before. Now, taking this further, introducing this notion of network-owned liquidity, and dApps being able to possibly have some liquidity routed to that through this decentralized liquidity pool that's owned by the network, and then having this bootstrapping program in order to bootstrap the liquidity in the first place and attract users and provide economic security. This is what we call basically the ultimate vertical integration. We think the truth of the matter is, as Armand and Karsh pointed out, this PoEL protocol can be used for other networks to bootstrap as well, and we're okay with that. Other networks are not going to be able to do what we do because they don't have our vertically integrated stack. Most of these other protocols are going to be application specific, probably a Cosmos Tendermint chain. I think this protocol is going to be used a lot in my world. And we're really excited to be pioneering this, bring it to market. It's going to be rolled out in the phase fashions, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera. Step by step, we'll be getting there. So it's not going to all be available at day one. Nonetheless, I think my hunch is that we will have the most compelling and convincing API, sustainable API because we have the most services and we have what I think is the most innovative Web3 business model in the world. Super excited about that. So go ahead and move over to the audience question. Maybe someone on my team can find some questions and post it on the screen. All right. Okay, so this is going to, let's see, maybe Armand or Ricard can jump into this one.
Yes, effectively. So there's got to be some lookup period, some for whenever you are parsing the PoEL protocol. And it's again, I want to highlight that the PoEL protocol was to create a sustainable source of liquidity for the network, both from the AMM side as well as from the staking reward side. So this lookup period gotta be not very long, reasonable considering what other DeFi protocols are applying and generally other staking systems are applying to bootstrap their capital. When the user wants to withdraw their capital, right? The capital will continue earning fees until it is fully withdrawn. And after withdrawal, effectively LP gets also the corresponding fees they earned capital contribution.
Okay. And of course, folks, we'll have a video on our website to review again. And we also have a white paper. And we'll be working on kind of a simplified blog post as well, like a light paper about to come out soon. Okay, next question is, so are the source fee credits unlimited and how do the total distributed source fee credits change over time? Or remember crush the simple.
Yes, as I think came up during the panel discussion as well, service fee credits are not unlimited. They're limited by its very nature, largely because we are quite focused on maintaining a sense of efficiency and sustainability within the network. It's quite natural that in earlier stages of the network, there's likely to be higher availability of credits. And as the network matures over a period of time, these will be gradually curtailed, again, largely in the wider interest of sustaining the entire ecosystem. But yes, they're not unlimited. They're limited, time bound, they're non-transferable. It's quite simply a use it or lose it type of provisioning. And it's likely to be available in greater abundance in earlier stages and will be reduced very gradually over a period of time. And that's the intention behind this, is really to the network and really encourage people to be more active participants in new stages, help form the network, and really create a very cohesive and aligned incentive structure that we are trying to promote.
Okay, let's see if there's any inbound.
Yes, so the question says, the paper says that single rewards are the project to go out. Why not? Okay, so in the paper, if you read the paper, we described how this design works, right? How the protocol is designed from the perspective of distributing the rewards being distributed first to the reward pool, and from there, reward pool being distributed to LPs. And I think what this question is asking is why we need this distributed to reward pool first before we are distributing to LPs. Why not to distribute to LPs directly? The reason for this is the intertemporal optimization, which we discussed already. So we want to make sure that higher amount of rewards are distributed during the period of times when our system is experiencing higher usage and demand from the user side, and correspondingly distribute less rewards during the period of time when the opposite is happening and our system is experiencing less demand. If you are distributing the reward directly to the LPs, right, in that case, you cannot effectively modulate the distribution based on these demand dynamics. The distribution effectively means that you always distribute whatever network distributes directly. So the reason why we have this component in the design choice is just to achieve this objective and also try to navigate our LPs to submit more capital during the times when the network really needs it.
Okay, great. So I'll tell you what, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Let's see if there's any that come in. Okay, so how can multi-asset liquidity make the economic security stronger? Hello, Karsh. Yeah.
Yes, we've discussed quite a few intricate details. So I suppose in the interest of simplicity, Quite simply, yeah, it's diversification, right? A volatile asset base that is used to secure the economic, well, for the economic security of the network is not really desirable for us, right? There are multiple ways of managing that. We choose to manage it by having multi-asset liquidity, which essentially helps us diversify a number of different risks away. So in essence, it helps us maximally mitigate non-systemic risk we would have been exposed to if we chose any one single asset to base our economic security on. And therefore, having multiple assets form the basket that is our the liquidity base is most diversified and is in the best interest of risk.
Okay. I think we're out of time here. We'll make sure this video, the replay is available. The proof verification liquidity video is available. The white paper is on our website already. We're going through a multi-week web series right now, right? So there'll be additional webinars coming up as well. So we want to make sure you all tune in. Surprisingly, I just saw the metrics. We had, these all require registrations, right? And we have over 40,000 registrants. That's a high number, more than I expected, much more than the last time we had. This is really wonderful to hear that you're all tuning in to learn more. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks all. Bye-bye.